Thank you for tuning in to Street Soldiers Radio. Comerica Bank is proud to sponsor the upcoming program featuring the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Tell me what you see when you look at me. Do you see another brother lost in these streets looking for his soul?
Trying to find my soul.
Or do you see another brother searching for lost souls in these streets? A street soldier.
Street soldier.
Here to help you get that chip off your shoulder, warm your colder days and sober your drunken ways, and find a way to help you get over these hurdles placed in our path. And this is not meant to amuse you. This is for all those who have questions but are afraid to ask.
I won't be afraid. I won't be afraid. No. When times get hard, you lose your way. Open your mind and hear what I say.
This is a message for the hard and the soft. To those who tune in weekly and to those who keep an eye out for 8 p.m. on Sundays and turn their radios off. The truth hurts. The cloth has been pulled. We're walking around half dead. Use this show as your IV. Alive and Free is a new movement. We've achieved self-destruction. A street soldier promotes self-improvement.
Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah. Streets couldn't be no colder, so I gotta be a soldier. It shouldn't be this hard for me. Even when it seems so hopeless, I gotta keep my focus. I'm glad to be alive and free, yeah.
You see a lot of faces on the screen tonight, a lot of faces. Y'all are actually, all y'all look pretty good too. I mean, some of y'all, no, not everybody looks bad at all. It's a good looking group. It's a good looking group. Well, who else?
Oh my goodness. How good to see you.
celebrate the holiday of Martin Luther King Jr. And so I'm just gonna say the names of everybody. When they come in, they can say what they do and the titles and all of that. I'm not gonna get into that because so I'll just raise your hand because I'll make sure I got everybody. Let's see, my first name is on here is Mr. Dennis Siegler. Raise your hand, please. All right, there he is, the Dennis. Nora Siegler. And yes, they are related, but they'll tell you how. Okay. Elijah Jordan. EJ. Every time I say your name, I want to say Elijah Rock. You probably don't know what that is, but the gospel folks in here know what that is. Elijah Rock. Is Jaira on? Jaira said she was coming. Is she here? I'm gonna have to jam her up.
Not yet.
Jaira Martin. Malcolm Mobley. There he is. Symphony Malone. There she is. Barwende Sane. Barwende, I hope I said your name right. Barwende with us yet? Jonathan, you better get him because I see his name, but I don't see him.
He's here, but it looks like he's frozen.
Okay, well, unfreeze yourself, brother, because I want to hear what you got to say. Okay, just go back and start all over again. Okay. Jonathan Greenberg, that's you. And Tamiko Ferguson. Okay. It's clear I asked each of you to be with us on what I consider obviously a very special day, celebrating the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. I thought I had this and then I messed it up. Hold on. I had it. Here we go. Martin Luther King Jr. I thought I pulled it up. Okay, it is celebrated across the United States in honor of the iconic civil rights leader who was assassinated in 1968. The day was first observed in 1986, 3 years after President Ronald Reagan made it a federal holiday. The day marks King's birthday, which is actually January 15th. And so we celebrate his birthday on the third Monday, I believe it is, of each year. And the way I framed this, all of you saw how I put it, a look at the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and what he means to us. And anytime I have these discussions, I love to get the family. What I call the family is, the youngest members of the family and the elders. See, I think I'm probably in the elder category, but you never know. And so I love having family discussions. And I always like to see if, and in particular, I want to see how those of us from the youngest to the elders feel about Martin Luther King Jr. So I actually had written, Lady E, I had written this thing out that has this basic stuff, and I think we all know it. Born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm gonna go through this real quick, okay? Son of a Baptist minister, graduated from Morehouse College at the age of 19 and chose to follow in his father's footsteps and become a preacher. He was a young and relatively unknown pastor in Montgomery when he was thrown into the vortex of the civil rights movement. He answered the call and became a leader of the organizer of the Montgomery bus boycott. This is a sketch of his life, folks, for which he was arrested and his house bombed. The images, pictures, and facts of the rest of his life are fixed and indelible in our minds. The confrontation with Bull Connor and the segregationists in Birmingham, Alabama, the pictures of police attacking unarmed demonstrators with dogs and fire hoses, his letter from a Birmingham jail, the Selma to Montgomery march, the March on Washington. All right, his speeches from I Have a Dream to the Drum Major Instinct to I've Been to the Mountaintop. His winning of the Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 35. The signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Bill, his opposition to the war in Vietnam, his appearance in Memphis on behalf of the sanitation workers, and his advocacy of the Poor People's Campaign, and finally his assassination on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis in April of 1968. That's a sketch of his life, but of course the sketch just says nothing about everything else, all in between. I think a great man. And I personally think way unbelievably fitting to have a holiday every year to remind us of the remarkable and great Martin Luther King. But that's me. So I'm going to start this way. I'm going to ask each of you to give me one word. And I'm going to write this down. One word that for you describes Martin Luther King. And then I'm going to go back and tell you why. So I got to find Jaira. Where is Jaira? It's hurting me. I miss her. She's away at college. She said she's going to be here. Okay. Dennis, you can introduce yourself real quick and give me your one word that would describe for you Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. This is really a great honor. Honestly, I'm only here. I'm friends with Joe, with Dr. Marshall, but I'm really only here because of my daughter, because Joe actually likes to hear what Nora has to say, and he felt sorry for me being left out all the time.
Why you say that? Let's see. Don't even start off like that. Don't do that. Although I did ask for your wife, but she can come and take a place. But no.
Okay. Okay. Let me first of all. I'm an OBGYN. I'm at Stanford and Santa Clara Valley Medical, and I'm most famous for being Nora's father. I have memories, we'll get to it, of Martin Luther going back 54 years. And the first word that came to mind when you just said that, Joe, was visionary.
Visionary. Got it. Okay. Nora, you're next.
Hi there. I'm not sure how I can follow that introduction, but it's nice to see you, Dad. And thank you, Dr. Marshall, for having me on. This is the first large-scale event that I have ever participated in to commemorate Dr. King. So this is wonderful, and I hope it's a really educational experience for me and everyone here. I am a recent college graduate, and I will be starting medical school next year. And oh, Dr. Marshall, I have to show you this. I've been reading your book. I love it. So I recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it. Yeah, I'm only halfway, a third through, but I love it.
You make sure your father reads the book, okay? That's all. That's your job. Make sure he reads the book too, because I gave him one.
We'll have a family book club. One word to describe Dr. King. That's a challenge. I would say faithful.
Okay.
Faithful, not only to his.
Okay. Oh,
the
yeah.
gospel,
We'll
but
come back.
to-
I just want to get the first word. We're going to open with
Faithful.
word. Visionary and faithful. Tamiko Ferguson. What's up, Miko?
Hello, thank you for having me. I am a high school guidance counselor in Kingston, Ontario in Canada. I'm excited to be here. I think the word that I would choose, it's hard to get down to one word, but I think I will go with warrior.
Got it. Jonathan Greenberg. Jonathan. I like Jonathan. Jonathan's hella cool. I like when I really like people. I call him cool. But that, what's up, Jonathan? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing so well. Dr. Marshall, it's an incredible feeling and honor to be with you and everybody on this call. It's my first time on Street Soldiers Radio. I'm very proud to be here. I'm the director of the USF Institute for Nonviolence and Social Justice. And boy, it's hard to use one word, but I'll say prophetic.
Prophetic. Okay. Okay, EJ, Elijah Jordan. Elijah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Elijah. I'm a senior at Freedom High School. And I would say Martin Luther King would be, like, one word for him would be peacemaker.
Got it. Okay, Symphony.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Symphony. I'm a junior at University Preparatory Academy High School, and I think one word I would use to describe Dr. King would be valorous.
Say that again, honey.
Valorous.
Okay, Malcolm Mobley.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show, Mrs. Stell, Dr. Marshall. I'm Malcolm Mobley, currently a senior at Morgan State University. Let's see. One word that I would use to describe Dr. Martin Luther King would be determined.
Becoming. All right. And I got to make sure I said, Barry, you say your name so I will say it correctly. Go ahead, say your name. Barwende, say your name because I want to hear it say it correctly.
Correct, it's Barwende.
Barwende. Okay, Sane, right?
Correct.
All right, say who you are and your word for Dr. King.
Great, thank you, Dr. Marshall. It's my pleasure to be part of this sharing on Dr. King's legacy. So hi everyone and happy celebration. So I am an African Jesuit priest. I am working with Jonathan at the USF Institute for Nonviolence and Social Justice. I'm also doing a doctorate program in organizational leadership, still at USF. So if I had one word to describe Dr. King, it would be inspirational.
Say that one more time.
Inspirational.
Inspirational. Got it. Okay. Lady E?
Purpose.
You say perfect?
Purpose.
Wow. All right. Okay. And we all getting on this.
Ooh, good. Because I had one. I was scared and I say fearless. Although he was probably a little nervous, but fearless. Mm-hmm.
Is the soul there, or is he just got his screen up? Okay, he didn't come up. So I said one word, and then I'm gonna cheat for myself and give two. Can't open. My words are heroic and inspirational. All right, now we go back and you tell us why. Why did you pick that word? Dennis, why? What about Dr. King made him nerd for you?
Unfortunately, there's too many words. I can tell you what, I don't remember many things from when I was 4 or 5 years old. But one of the first things I remember, and it was, I don't actually remember the shooting in Memphis, but I remember being with my dad, and all our news came from Walter Cronkite. Some of you are too young to remember Walter Cronkite, but that's how all of our news came on a nightly basis. And my parents were Hungarian refugees, and they fled communist government, the Russians imposed, and they didn't have much feel one way or the other for Black rights or anything else. But what they did have is a sense of justice. And I remember the sadness that my dad felt when Martin Luther King was assassinated. And that's when he told me about things like, that's when I learned about a Nobel Prize. He told me about it's the most virtuous and important award you can get, and that people who win this award don't get killed. And I remember just that the profound sadness that he had. And that sticks for over 5 decades. So anyway, there is one word. I kind of got jealous of several other people choosing a better word or a descriptive word, and heroic, and but what he always did is he always did the right thing for the right reasons. And there's so many. In fact, I was discussing MLK or Dr. King with a friend of mine, and he was saying, oh, so many things he said are cliched, but they're not cliched. He said them. People then used them and made them cliched. And we have such a mucked up world right now. And I just think that we would be better served if he were here, because we now have a place where two sides don't talk to each other. And I'm one of those. I can't talk to a Trumpist. It makes me sick. But the reality is you don't get anywhere without talking. And he was able to talk to both sides. And he had a quote, which I wrote down because I remember it from a long time ago. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish. I can't even remember. I can't read my own handwriting at the moment. Or perish, or perish together as fools.
Right.
And I just think that we need a great uniter. And maybe that's a better word I should have used, uniter. Because that's what's lacking right now. And that's what he did across all barriers, across all walks. And he fearlessly is what we would need at this point in time. But fortunately, his legacy is here. Fortunately, we're able to celebrate his birthday, and he wasn't on this planet for a period of time. And I think his work is going to get done. It's just not going to get done as quickly as if he was here to do it. And anyway, that's my thought, going back 5 decades.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to hop around. I'm going to bounce back and forth between the young and the older. Symphony, your word was, well, anyway, go ahead. Why did you use that word to describe me?
I said valorous because like the definition of that is to be courageous in the face of danger. And that was basically like what he had to face his entire time when he was doing what he was doing. And he stayed like courageous through the whole thing and like kept pursuing what he was doing up until the very end of his lifetime.
I'm gonna come back to the young people because simply we got to ask the question, but we're gonna move on. EJ, your word was peacemaker.
Yeah. From all that Martin Luther King wanted to do, like one thing he didn't want in his process was violence. He wanted everyone to maintain their calm while they were marching, and in order to have peace. So in that way, he was a peacemaker because he wanted to do things, the normal way with no, basically no tension between anyone. And yeah.
Yeah, I some of the things I just got to comment. I mean, he just believed in nonviolence. I mean, like, hey, this is where we're gonna do it, right? And most people I know is like, man, you hit me, I'm gonna beat the hell out of you. But he was like, no. And then he taught everybody else how to do it. I watched those videos, which you're actually gonna see on Tuesday, and I'm watching. And he had young people following. I blown away. Yes, peacemaker. That's great. Tamiko.
I think one of the things that I thought was so interesting when I did a bit of reading was that he didn't seek out the role that he had. He was young and he was kind of, not forced into it, but it was suggested that he take on that role because he was young, and he, like everybody has said, he just was so committed and stayed so within his message all the time. And I think that takes a certain kind of spirit or soul to be able to do that, to be so rooted in what you believe and not have all of the other distractions and awful things that were happening. And, the number of times that his family was threatened, he was imprisoned, and still his message was his message, right? And he was young too. It wasn't, he wasn't old and wise. He was young and figuring it out as he was doing it. And I think there's something very special about who he was, sort of a warrior spirit that kept him centered in that.
26 years old when he accepted the call in Montgomery. And he could have said, you know what, Tamiko, what if he had said no?
Right?
Think about that. What if Dr. King had said, I want to go back to Atlanta and pastor the church, my father's church? History would not be the same.
It would not.
And I never thought about that. He could have actually said no. Oh my God. Oof. Jonathan Greenberg.
So what came to mind were the tradition of prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah and Moses and Jesus, people like that who had powerful conscience, spoke truth, and in his case and many cases of prophets paid the ultimate sacrifice for it. But we have a choice either to follow the words and the teachings and the admonitions of these prophets, including Dr. King, and save our country, or we will lose it. I mean, it's so important.
Nora? Faithful with your word.
Yes, so faithful. And kind of to echo what Dr. Greenberg is saying, Dr. King answered to a higher power. He was faithful to not only the church and the theology that he obviously studied for many years and that he had a well-versed background in, but also to his morals. He was faithful to nonviolence, and to the point where he could educate and influence other people to be faithful to nonviolence. And another part of that faithfulness and answering to the higher power was this ability not to blame or hate individuals, but to hate systems of oppression and poverty.
I don't know how he did that. There's certain things about Dr. King, he must have been up this another place, because not to hit back and then not to blame and see good in folks that I clearly. Anyway, thank you. Yes, that's why I guess that's why we got a holiday. One of the reasons got Malcolm Mobley, Becoming.
Oh, I actually said determined.
Oh,
I think I might have. Yeah.
I can't hear.
Oh, it's okay. But yeah, I said that Dr. King was determined because he kept pressing forward despite all of the obstacles that were thrown at him. You know, he had the foresight to keep fighting, you know, from a moral standpoint, you know, and to have the patience to fight, you know, violence with peace, you know, which gave the people that were opposing him, anyone that was trying to oppose everything that he was trying to accomplish, you know, no room to say that him or Black people as a whole were doing anything wrong or asking for too much or anything like that. So that's why I used the word determined.
Great. Now, one day.
Okay, thank you. For me, the word inspiration is the best for me to describe Dr. King, because Dr. King has been inspiring me since my childhood. And as a Black African, when I look at the imperial exploitation of Africans by the Western people, I am feeling very good inspiration, courage. And when I am listening, when I am reading, and when I am watching, when I am contemplating Dr. King, it's like the Holy Spirit is speaking to me, how to speak to the power and also how to speak to the grassroots. Because when you look at the ongoing exploitation of Africa, you need people who can be inspired by Dr. King. One sentence, if I was God, I would have sent Dr. King back to Africa to shake the coconut trees of imperialism. But getting his inspiration is something great I am praying for. For that reason, the word inspiration is for me the best. Thank you.
Thank you. And
oh, this is so nerve-wracking being on the talking end. But I will be fearless, like Dr. Marshall. I mean Dr. King, I'm sorry. The other doctor. Fearless. I guess when you know, you, Dr. Marshall, and Mrs. Dell introduced me to his writings, and I didn't know what a deep thinker he was. And I think that's what really kind of made me see him as a human more, not more, but just understand him. Like he was just, I think he taught us to kind of think and look at ourselves, like everybody, as human, right? We have these thoughts and these feelings, and to really embrace that, right? Embrace your tough mind and your tender heart and what that looks like. And I feel like he was fearless in looking at ourselves and then trying to share that kind of message with others, and then sharing that message of doing what's right as like a human. And I think that's, you know, to stand tall and to treat each other well, you know, and with love, and to, well, I'm sure he was probably nervous when he was doing all of the work that he was doing, but it was necessary. And he had to be fearless in order to do that. So yes, so that's why I think the word is so important to describe him.
You know, and interestingly enough, that's the word that Clarence Jones, Dr. King, that a lot of us know. I mean, they know very well, especially Jonathan and I know, and Mr. Sell knows, and has been on the show, and a great friend of Alive and Free. So Dr. King's personal attorney and speechwriter. That's the word he uses a lot of times to describe Dr. King. And he was with him. He said he was fearless. It doesn't mean, he said, and he says, that doesn't mean he wasn't afraid, but he was fearless, you know. And just a comment about being fearless. You see a lot of so-called leaders who send the troops out there and call, and they sitting in the chair, right? Directing folks. Dr. King was at the front of the march. He wasn't even at the back of the march. So he was definitely fearless. I love that word. Lady E, you had a word. Whoa, go with your word.
So if I might, Dr. Marshall, I'd like to say that I have really enjoyed hearing every word. Every word has been a good word, a right word, the perfect word. because it gives insight and clarity into who Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is seen to be, who he is, who he was, and the impact and impression that he's made on all of us and so many others. And so just to address Dr. Dennis, visionary was the right word, the good word, and the best word to start off with, because that's exactly how most people see Dr. King, the insight. And then that word, that speech, that's the infamous one, the one that everybody seems to know, I have a dream, which speaks to that vision. I just need to say that. Purpose. I couldn't say on purpose because I can only use one word, but I feel like what allows somebody to do, to stand, to take, to be exposed to all of the things that he was exposed to, that he went through, was purpose. Being fearless, you know, see, that's to hear that word, so for somebody to tell me, see, Mrs. Steele, you are fearless. I'm like, no, I am Chicken Little, but there's a purpose. I have a purpose. There's something that I have got to do, and I cannot not do it. And so for me, that's Dr. King, that purpose that drove him and kept him and moved him and made him continue to stand, to sit, to lay down, whatever he did. It was a purpose, because you're right. He didn't want to do it. He wasn't trying to, as a young person, he was only 26. For many of us, he was just a kid. He's not trying to do that. He's trying to do what they told him to do back in, my God, you know, now you want me to go do what? But you know, when that something inside you connects, somebody says that thing that lets you know, oh my goodness, it touched him. And he got in touch with his purpose. And he could not do it, which allowed him to be the visionary, to be fearless, to be inspirational, to be determined, to be the warrior, all those things, the prophet. He could not do it, because that was that purpose. Oh, yes. Y'all paused too long. And, you know, I've just reached that time in my life where it doesn't matter. I was a senior in high school. The day, the year, the time when Dr. King was assassinated. And I was sitting in class, oh my goodness, but then I remember when Kennedy was assassinated and where I was. But when Dr. King was assassinated, we went to school the next day. And I was in one of those schools that in Kansas City, Kansas, one of the schools where they had just drawn the line and they allowed African Americans, which at that time we were called Blacks, Black kids to go to this prominent high school. Before they drew that line, all the Black kids had to go to another school way, way away. They didn't have buses, so we have to walk in snow way. But they drew that line, and I was fortunate enough to go to the white school. There were 100. My graduating class was 676. There were 100 Black kids in my class. And tell you what, we went to school the next day, and our school refused to lower the flag. We couldn't understand that. As a senior in high school, we couldn't understand why around the country, flags were down, but not my school. And so I don't know how the word got around, but I looked up and we decided to practice what Dr. King had taught. We got up, we got our books, and we walked out. It wasn't just the 100 Black kids. It was about 300, 400 white kids. And we all got up and we walked out of that school, and our school was on, like, if you're familiar with the main street, it was on the main street. And we walked down the main street all the way to City Hall to protest. How dare they not lower that flag? Now, that was my first act of political activism. And I thought, absolutely, I got my stuff and I walked. We got all the way down. It was about 30 blocks. We got down in front of City Hall. My mother worked at City Hall at the time. Why was she in the window? You know, just like a mother. She spotted me. I saw her looking at me. She promised me something when I got home. I said, all right. But that day, when we got to school the next day, guess where the flag was? They lowered it. That's my story. Purpose.
Great.
Mine was, and it's hard to pick between the two, and one of ours been used, heroic and inspirational. He's just a hero. And I was fortunate to be raised at a time with a bunch of heroes, and he was one of them. I always say the 3 M's: Martin, Malcolm, and Medgar were the 3 M's at the time. And we're talking about this one in particular, but I just couldn't imagine how he could do it, how he could do it. And those of us who were around the time know that he was, in fact, those of us who were around can talk about this as we move forward. Dr. King wasn't popular with a lot of folks. They weren't only popular with with the segregationists, the white folks that didn't want him down there. Malcolm X gave him a hard time. A lot of people gave him a hard time.
Right.
We found out that the government with J. Edgar Hoover was following, just wiretapping his phone. The stuff they were doing to this man, he was a man of peace, right? And he was just so heroic in that he never I'm through. I can't take this no more. But every word you use, the spiritual connection, and he's just this hero. I was a senior in college, my senior year in college when he got killed, when he got assassinated, I don't say killed. And I remember I was working at college students go to work, right? So I'm working, I was actually working at a pharmacy, and making deliveries. And I came back and I told the owner, I said, Dr. King just got killed. Dr. King. Now look, I'm about to. And I remember that man told me, I'll never forget this. How could I forget it? He said, well, he shouldn't have been down there doing that in the first place. That's what he said. And I quit. And a college kid can't be quitting his job, right? I need my little part-time money. I quit, went back to school. And, I was at USF, and all the Black students at the school, man, we just cried like babies. We marched to the campus. And after they killed Dr. King, I said, we started our BSU. That was it. After that, I know we're going to make this happen. We started BSU right then, so because of heroism. And he knew he was going to die. And, but he said that and you can each comment on some of the, I've been to the mountaintop. To me is his, maybe the speech that gets me the most. It's I like anyone else, I love to live a long time, but hey, I'm not stopping. So heroic and inspirational. And one of the things I really wanted to find out is that he's still that way for my young people, because I was there, and Lady E was there, and Jonathan was there, and Dennis was close enough, I guess, there. But what do they teach you about Dr. King, Nora and EJ and Symphony and Malcolm? What do they teach you about him today? Is it just the sound bout, or how much? I'm always wondering how much depth they go in about Martin Luther King. Just go ahead and tell me what you learned in school, or
I would say they don't actually at all. I remember in my sophomore year, from my U.S. history class, like all we would learn is like about the presidents, like wars we had against other countries and stuff. And back like that was when I went to my old school, but it was a really diverse school, and we didn't have that many Black kids in the school as well. So it was like maybe 2, including myself, that was in the class. And we all came together and we asked the teacher if we could have it didn't even have to be like a whole week. It could have just been one day where we talk about Black history itself. Like we literally had to beg to have like a lesson about Black history. And we never did get it. We just kept sticking to what was inside the textbook. So I never really experienced having a lesson or topic about my Black leaders and stuff. And I wish I did. I'm most likely not going to in the future. But I wish school systems like would include that into history, because that's like one of the biggest part of history, you know. So yeah, I just wish, you know, they would include that. And not only is it informational to me, me and my, like, you know, Black students in general, but it's also informational to other students who don't know about what happened back in that time.
Symphony, what about you?
I would probably say the same thing as Elijah. Like when it came to learning at like the school I'm at now and like my elementary school, when it came to learning about people of color, like it would always be tied into like the slavery times. Like it was never within the empowering times. Like it was never mentioning things that would empower and uplift us. It was always something that was meant to tear us down, like within the textbooks or the videos that we watched or anything. And so whenever it came to wanting to know more about my culture, I would always have to do outside research. It was never within the school, the system that was like supposed to teach me about history. It would always like exclude that part. So it was just like, it was hard for me to learn certain things about my culture. I would have to like go to other sources in order to find what I needed to know.
Nora?
So in my experience, I did learn about Dr. King pretty much throughout, from elementary school through high school. But I will say Martin Luther King Jr. was one of very few people of color at all that we learned about in history. It was Dr. King. I was fortunate enough to learn about Dr. King and the civil rights movement in several years, but African-American history was very much limited in all of my education. And it was also told in a way where Dr. King's activism and the Voting Rights Act in the mid-60s was sort of the end of racial discrimination in the United States. That's the lens that we were taught through. Where, yeah, Dr. King was this amazing figure, and after he was assassinated, it was a tragedy, but then racism just ended. It was never tied into the battle that we were still fighting. And it really wasn't until college that I really understood that we're still fighting the same battles he was.
Yeah. Malcolm.
For me, I'd say the last time I had some in-depth like moment in school learning about specifically Martin Luther King was elementary school, because I went to George Washington Carver Elementary School, and I don't know if you know Miss Emily Wade Thompson, but she was going to teach us anything. It was about you know, significant Black individuals in history. So every like assembly we'd be assigned a Black inventor or a civil rights activist, and we go look them up. And and we'd find out as much as we can about them. Like I got assigned, I think, Frederick M. Jones, and now I know that he invented the refrigerator truck. But and we get stuff like that. But that was way back then. For middle school and high school, I really didn't get anything like that. But after I went to college, I remember the first thing they did for our Access orientation was take us to the Blacks and Wax Museum in DC. So that, I mean, just to give you like a brief overview of like the kind of education I'm getting on, you know, Dr. King and individuals like himself.
What frustrates me about the commercial portrayal, and I'll call it the commercial portrayal, or of Dr. King, maybe not the commercial, the watered down portrayal. Dr. King is, you hear that one speech, you hear that one line, you know, I have a dream that one day, which is great. And it becomes a sound bite. You know, sometimes I've heard it in records, in music. But I think a couple of you said the depth and breadth of everything that was in him and the changes in his life. And, you know, rarely do they mention, unless you get into the Poor People's Campaign, rarely do they mention his opposition to the war in Vietnam. You know, rarely do they mention the anger Dr. King had. Rarely do they mention the totality of him. And you know, and of course this applies to all of Black history, all of Black American history and African history even. But with some specifically talking about him, they do him, I think, I like what you said, or they're trying to make him palatable, you know, as they can, and I think to Murray, and they don't talk about how much they persecuted the man, and I don't mean just the assassination. I said before, you know, J. Edgar Hoover hated Dr. King, and he taped all of his conversations. And, you know, they want to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah and COINTELPRO, Dr. King or Malcolm X or anybody else. And they call him a communist. You know, that gets me. Dr. King, a communist. It's funny how still today the same folks using that word to describe anything they don't like, right? It's communist. He's a communist. And I think they do him a complete disservice. And I think if you don't have conversations like this, maybe the one thing they did mess up was those that don't care, because it took a long time, and I really appreciate the folks that did make this a holiday, is that every year you got to deal with whether you like it or not. You got to deal with Martin Luther King. You got to deal with, and you got to see where we are today versus where everything that he, you know, and those folks wanted to achieve, and how much further we have to go. One of the things that and just amazes me to this day is the impact he had around the world. In Poland, and you can speak to this, especially being African. In Poland, they sing the praises of Dr. King. Well, like Lech Walesa, when he was trying to the nation of communism to the spirit of Dr. King. He did it in Egypt years ago. In South Africa, certainly Mandela talked about Dr. King.
Desmond Tutu.
Desmond Tutu. On the continent, does his name resonate from your experience over there?
Absolutely. You know what is really wonderful with Dr. King? It's when you are capable of seeing a kind of intersectionality through which you can see a Black person, a Christian pastor, at the same time, a philosopher, a theologian. So Dr. King is putting many things in the same basket. And when you see his youngness and his capability to put everything together, in West Africa, I can tell you, Christians, Muslims, freedom fighters, social movement, social civilian movement, and even leaders, they recognize in Dr. King the highest expression of somebody who can put together many things at the same time. And what is really full of admiration in Africa also, it's when we, the Black people, we see behind Dr. King all people from all colors, white people, Chinese, and everybody. When I was a child, I was thinking this guy was only fighting and was supported by people who are Black like him. But when I grown and I saw through media how Dr. King's ideas were supported by anybody who is caring for justice, everybody who loves justice and peace in the world is really recognizing himself in Dr. King. And I can tell you, in all African countries I visited, about 15, you can see a center dedicated to Martin Luther King, center dedicated to his work, center dedicated, or institution dedicated to something, or a classroom dedicated to him. So I can tell you, people are really proud to say, yes, this man deserves to be celebrated everywhere. Yeah.
He may have been the greatest combination of speaker-doer ever.
Absolutely.
I mean, other than Frederick Douglass, who everyone is, people have said was a great speaker, and also freedom fighter, abolitionist, who went in and talked to presidents. Dr. King, obviously we know he could speak, but then he is in Lyndon Johnson's office. He's working on civil rights bills. I mean, he spoke and he did. He spoke and he did. He spoke and he's just amazing me that he would be able. You can't say enough about, to me, just that combination, and that's rare. That's rare to be able to inspire and lead people with words, and inspire and lead people with actions.
Absolutely.
These are just things that are running through my head as we're talking about this extraordinary man, again, and you see portrayals of him a lot as later in life about how I mean, listen to Clarence, and you guys gotta know Clarence, of how he would call Mahalia Jackson and ask him to sing the song, Precious Lord to him, to keep him inspired and keep him moving. It just had to be extremely difficult with the world feeling the weight of the world. I mean, you've seen these pictures of somebody pushing a rock up, or Atlas holding a boulder, or Sisyphus pushing a rock, and it had to be that with him. But he really believed. There was a contest years ago. I remember some CNN did some contest as who was the greatest American, right? And they do these contests every once in a while, and they had Ray Ray on CNN, and they had like Martin Luther King #5, right? And I'm like, and they had Ronald Reagan, they had Abraham Lincoln, and I'm like, what the hell? Come on now. Look. Number one, other than Lincoln did get assassinated, but they killed this man. He believed in America. To me, he's the greatest, as great an American as there ever was. I don't even want to hear about it. Then they had the, slaveholder George Washington. And they don't like people to mention that, but I got to say it's true. That's the way it is. Abraham Lincoln, who 2 years before the Emancipation Proclamation said he wanted to send Blacks out of the country. Again, not in the history books. The great emancipator, actually, maybe he had a change of heart. Maybe it was political, or maybe he actually believed, in freeing the slaves, but he didn't want to do that. So all these people, they ranked over. America's a contest place, Martin Luther King. And I just, you run out of words for him, and we are left with his heroism and his achievements. How do you think he would feel about what's going on today? Oh, everybody can speak to that. How do you feel he would feel? How do you feel he would, what he would say, how I feel about going? Because I'm sure he would feel that he believed that, you know, I always say every time has its movement, every movement has its movers, that all the work was not going to be completed, you know. And it wasn't, but he was still working on that. The Poor People's Campaign, economic inequality was his big thing at that time. How do you feel about, go ahead.
I can just say that there are some things that he's already said that applied, that were significant then, and they apply today.
Good.
One of the things he said is, he who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetrate it. He said, nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. And another one he said was, and then I'm going to go to Dennis, he said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Dennis.
Well, I remember him saying that the time is always right to do what is right. First of all, I think there are people out there right now, there clearly are, these movements that are happening and shaking our foundation now. There are people out there who are doing the right thing. But what's missing is that unifying communicator, which is what Dr. King was. We need to have a Dr. King, and there won't be a Dr. King per se. I mean, but there has to be somebody of that force who is listened to by multiple sides. Because right now what we have is an echo chamber and everybody reinforcing on one side and reinforcing on the other side. And he was able to do what Nelson Mandela did in South Africa. He was able to talk to his friends and keep his enemies closer, and he didn't call them enemies. He thought that we have to work on it together. And I think he would be highly effective if he were around now. I have no way to prove that, but he was, it's hard for us to look in time, but 1965 was an incredibly difficult and tumultuous time for our country. And we think that this is the most tumultuous right now, but he was able to be effective at that time. And I think he would be equally effective now. And with social media, he'd be able to get his word out even better and faster. So anyway, I think that he would be highly, highly effective were he here.
Jonathan, you got your, jump into it.
Yeah, well, yeah, I want to share a few thoughts. First thing I want to say is I want to thank Elijah and Symphony and Nora and Malcolm. I have to say, I'm kind of shocked by what you told me about the lack of education about Black history and about Dr. King when you were in high school. That's not okay. It's not okay. And it makes me want to do something about it. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. A few nights ago, we had a birthday party. Dr. Marshall was with us for Clarence Jones, who he was talking about, Dr. King's lawyer. Dr. Jones turned 91 a couple nights ago. He was almost exactly 2 years younger than Dr. King would have been 93 yesterday. And one of the people on the call was Andrew Young. And then you probably know Andrew Young, he's going to be 90 in about 6 weeks. Andrew Young was Dr. King's closest deputy in Atlanta, working with him in every campaign, side by side, and risking his life. You know, an incredible person and close to Clarence Jones. And Andy Young said, Ambassador Young said that in his 90 years, he feels that this moment that we're in our country today, now, is the darkest time, the worst time. And this is somebody who lived in the, you know, through Jim Crow. He was beat up by the KKK in St. Augustine, Florida. He saw the disenfranchisement of the Black population throughout the South. And he says it's worse now. It's worse now. And, you know, we can talk about why that is, but Dr. King always warned about backlash.
Yep.
And we're going through a backlash that's so severe at this point in multiple ways. And we have a life or death decision about whether we're going to follow the path of Dr. King through peaceful, nonviolent struggle that's persistent, or we're going to lose our democracy. And it's up to us. We can't wait for Dr. King to come back. He can't come back. It's up to us to carry that forward. And our whole democracy is on the line in this country and other places in the world to follow the methods of disciplined nonviolence to fight for justice, voting rights, democracy, and to fight against forces of fascism, which is a word Dr. King used. So it's really up to us to carry that forward, I think.
Well, one day, go right ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. You asked a very wonderful question. I would emphasize two attitudes. If Dr. King was to come back, he would have to feel consolation and desolation. Consolation, why? Because Dr. King's ideas are really spreading and expanding throughout the world. During this last summer, July 2021, I was sent back home by Jonathan to train 130 peacemakers in my country, teaching Dr. King's ideas. And since I was there and I keep in touch with these people, I can feel the willingness of people to really communicate and make a kind of communion with all of these peaceful ideas. So in terms of theory, in terms of philosophy, many people are ready to embrace Dr. King's ideas. And the expansion is really great and positive. I have no doubt for that. That would be a great consolation for Dr. King. But Dr. King would also feel a kind of desolation. Why? Because we have more and more celebrations of Dr. King's philosophy, but we have less and less people who are ready to sacrifice like him. I used to say, when I'm living here in the US, I see many people speaking about Dr. King, and also back in Africa, it's like we are grabbing some branches of a tree, but we are not willing to grab the trunk or to go to the roots. Dr. King was able to sacrifice his life for justice and face the power because he was a man of prayer. He used to pray a lot, to meditate, to fast. He used to nurture his fighting. Reason why he was not afraid. He was, I like the word fearless. But nowadays, we have people who are ready to claim day in and day out, Dr. King, Dr. King. They are wearing t-shirts. They are writing everywhere, Black Lives Matter and all the rest, but they are not ready to sacrifice for Dr. King. For me, Dr. King would have feel a kind of desolation to see how we can make a lot of noise around him, but when it comes to sacrifice, very few will stand up. This is what I can say, desolation and consolation.
You know, and I've described Dr. King as, Dennis, I understand what you're saying. I would look at it this way, however. We just need to find the king in us. I mean, I'm Dr. King. We're all Dr. Kings. When Martin Luther King started doing what he's doing, he didn't do it because he didn't know it was going to end up being like the great Dr. King. He just said, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna lead this march today. I'm gonna do this tomorrow. Now, was he committed to ideals? Was he committed to all men are created equal? Was he committed to America living up to what it said it was gonna be in 1776? Absolutely. That guided his life. Oh, no. Freedom, justice, equality. Y'all lied. Okay? And it can't be this way. So this is what I'm gonna do. And one thing led to another. I think when we make, he wouldn't want to be this monolithic figure. Yeah, I'm just doing that's just what I do. You know, it's what I do. It's what I do. Dr. King, all people need to do, if you really admire, love, and honor Dr. King, you got to find the king in you. You got to find where you stand. And you got to be fearless. Because all this stuff is based on fear. All they're doing is trying to scare you. And let me tell you, the fact that one of the preeminent issues in his work was the right to vote. The fact that that is under a threat, if you can't stand up for that, maybe you just barbecue on Dr. King's holiday. Okay, you need to go listen to some Dr. King speeches. You need to read some Dr. King words. You need to listen. I've been to the mountaintop. You need to listen. You can't be. He's not. The superficial treatment of Martin Luther King is what does not allow him to inspire folks. You have to. I've seen Martin Luther King holidays where you even hear Dr. King. You got people collecting money. You got people giving political speeches. That ain't got nothing to do with Martin Luther King. You need to hear the man's voice. I remember he's the only person, I gotta say this. I won't say the only, maybe there's a couple. Malcolm's right there. But when I turn on a Dr. King speech or sermon, I cannot move for the next hour. I can't. And I've heard it before. I will stop in my tracks, sit down. It's got to come from the inside. And he was able to get you from the inside. So he wouldn't say, I'm the great leader. He'd say, I'm just doing what my purpose is here to do. And you just need to find Nia, the Kwanzaa principle, for you, the purpose. And I think having these conversations with Elijah and Symphony and Nora and Malcolm, and people used to ask me a long time ago, are you still doing what you do? You still working with them kids? Yeah, that's what I do. You still doing that radio show? Yeah, that's what I do. Because I can't let those folks down that came before me. And it's that simple. And I don't know, social media, I think would try and kill a man right now. I mean, they would put so much garbage out on him. It wouldn't even be fair. It would, they would, I mean, if they could do it with taping him and discredit him, what they could do with social media. So in a way, I'm glad he doesn't have to face that. Lady E, you wanted to jump in.
Dr. King said, our lives begin to end when we become silent about things that matter. And what we're seeing today is a lot of going along with, a lot of silence.
Yeah.
And not really addressing what really matters. I mean, I don't know how it has become so easy. Why? I don't know. I'm sorry. Why are we talking about voters, the right to vote?
Right.
Why is that an issue? I don't understand when you have human beings, citizens of this country, and we are still working to get me, the right to vote. Why don't I just have that? Why is that still a fight? And see, now I'm ready to cuss. Who in the hell has got the power to get in there and change it? And they don't. And why are there not enough people who can see that it's not okay and there's not enough to say, what is the problem? Why? This should not even be an issue, but it is. That's something to think about. And when you talk about what the Dr. King, yes, it would be great to have a leader, but we do. And what he has left with us, he's given us many leaders and they are in us, but we're just sitting back and saying nothing. And I can talk all day. I'm in an organization and we are working like crazy to keep people of color with the ability to vote. And then who can make the difference? And why don't they? Clearly, it's not Black people.
Look, Lady E, no, it is. Let me just say that.
Okay, well, fix me, correct me.
Well, no, let
Please.
me say how it is. No, let me show you because.
And Nora's hand was up. I'm just saying.
I'm gonna say this. Now I'm gonna go back to Nora.
All right.
Election, you talk about the backlash. It was the Black vote that made the difference. It was the Black vote that made the difference in Atlanta. It was the Black vote that made the difference in Pennsylvania. It was the Black vote, the inner city vote that made a difference in Michigan. But I'm saying because of that, the backlash is even stronger. And they definitely know who can make the difference. That's why this whole new round of voter suppression is coming up.
And see, but why? Do you understand what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. I hear what you're saying and I agree. But why is that even necessary?
Because
still,
it's not about all men are created equal. It's about power.
I know that. You are right.
It's not about all men.
Still.
Go ahead, Nora, jump in.
I don't have the answer to your questions, Lady Estelle. It's just as infuriating to me. Yeah, I don't fully understand. But when we're talking about social media and what Dr. King might say in the context of our time, of course, we can only speculate, but we really find ourselves in this epidemic of misinformation where we are just inundated all the time with contradictory information. And it's not just the fault of social media or media companies, it's also in the nature of our country and our democracy itself. And the book Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which I know we've talked about before, she includes parts about Dr. King going to India and meeting the untouchable caste, the Dalits, and how those people see him as the untouchable leader of the United States. And Wilkerson writes how we realize the hypocrisy of the land of the free being this airtight cage of poverty that is suffocating African Americans. And that was what he realized in the 60s or late 50s or early 60s when he went to India. But it's still very true today because the caste that existed then and created this contradictory government and society still exists today. So although Dr. King might have had a lot of things to say about our society, in one respect, he may not be so surprised because the fundamental issues that existed then still exist now, right? And
Yes.
which is, it's discouraging in one way, but the hopeful thing about Dr. King was also that he was this optimist and that he really could see that things could be better. He saw a better America and a better just world and a world that was more equitable and free of poverty. He didn't have enough time to do all the things he wanted to do in his life, but I think the perspective that he offers and also that people like Isabel Wilkerson offer in exploring his life and his work is to offer that perspective of hope and change and a reality and an education of what needs to happen. And Dr. Greenberg, when you talked about how it's not okay that we didn't learn as students, all of us younger people, that we didn't really learn about Dr. King and his complexity and about Black history in general, it's not just not okay, it's also in a major way what's holding us back from all holding what Dr. King saw.
A Dr. King quote, Nora, we must accept finite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope.
I'm right there with him.
That's what he said. Yes, sir, Elijah.
Thank you. You're sweet.
I just wanted to say, just to bring out that if he had came back, although like we are still going through racism, we are still going through, police brutality, and we still have people marching for justice, from people who have been murdered from like things that wasn't even necessary. We can say that we have improvement. We have improvement on segregation. We have improvement on equality. Things are a whole lot different than how they were back then. So I would say he definitely would see a change in our society, but he would also say there's still work that needs to be done. While there's racism that's still going on, there's always going to be work that needs to be done in our in today's society.
You, Dr. Queen quotes as we wrap up. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. That's Martin Luther King. That ain't Frederick Douglass. Although he said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. If a man has not discovered something he will die for, he isn't fit to live. The ultimate measure of a man, I love this one, is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I love that. Nothing worthwhile is easy. Your ability to overcome unfavorable situations will provide you with time to demonstrate your true strength and determination for success. There's more to this man than I don't live a dream, all right? The true neighbor will risk his position, his prestige, and even his life for the welfare of others. In dangerous valleys and hazardous pathways, he will lift some bruised and beaten brother to a higher and more noble life. Perhaps the worst sin in life, this is another quote, is knowing right and not doing it. I think we've heard that one already. The richer we have become materially, the poorer we become morally and spiritually. But it's all about the money now, right? We have learned to fly in the air like birds and swim like in the sea like fish. We have not learned the simple art of living together as brothers. Lady, I wish you had, and I don't think you do, Harry Belafonte's quote about Martin Luther King. I don't, and you read it so much better than me, and I don't think you can pull it up. If maybe Ann can find it for you, but I will offer this book to all of you, and this is something that we use in the class and we use a lot. And of course, Martin's seminal book is A Testament of Hope. This is our book, Strength to Love, Martin Luther King. It's actually a collection. Coretta put this together. It's a collection. You can see how earmarked I got it everywhere, of his speeches. These are speeches that weren't public, that he probably made on Sunday at the church. But it is an incredible series of words by Martin Luther King. It's called Strength to Love. And I will actually buy and send it to all of you. You know me, good. If I find something that's good, Jonathan probably got it. I will get it to you. You talk about drawing strength from some writing. This book, Strength to Love, I draw personal strength from every time I read the essays, the speeches of Martin Luther King. And any way we can get that to Lady E, you got that anywhere? We can get it to her because she reads it so much better than me.
I just
probably
sent
don't
it
have
over.
it.
I hope was that the one for Mrs. Stell? Do you see it?
I hold on a second because I was in my files looking.
Okay.
While she's looking for that, any last words?
Let's see.
Way better than I thought it was going to go.
Dr. Marshall, I'd like just to read a quote. So Strength to Love, I know that book very well. As a matter of fact, Father Sane taught that book in a little seminar that we did at USF.
Yeah.
And those are all homilies and sermons he gave in church.
Right.
Yeah. But I want to read a quote from his speech on April 4th, 1967 when he condemned the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And then this is a famous quote also, but I want to read it briefly. We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values. We must rapidly begin the shift from a thing-oriented society to a person-oriented society, when machines and computers, profit motives and property rights are considered more important than people. The giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered.
Wow. That's Martin Luther King. Any luck, Lady E?
No, I can't find it. Ann, did you find it?
And it's not. I'll
Is
read
it The Human Spirit?
No, I'll read it. I'll read it, and it's not nearly as good. This is Harold Belafonte's introduction of Martin Luther King. Sometimes, yes, sometimes the good Lord accepts his own perfection, closes his eyes, and goes ahead and takes his own good time to make himself a man. Sometimes that man gets a hold of the idea of what is possible for him to do. That man lets that idea guide him as he grows and struggles in sorrow until finally he comes into his own God-given shape, achieves his own individual and lonely place in the world. It doesn't happen very often. Oh no. But when it does, then even the very stones will cry out in witness to his vision, and hills and towers echo his words and deeds. His examples will live in the hearts of man forever. The master doesn't make many like that, for that kind of man is dangerous to the sloppy ways of the world. That kind of man loves truth even more than he loves his wife, his life, his wife, or his children, because he has been designated and set aside to do the hard tasks that have to be done. That kind of man will do what he sees as justice, even if the earth he loves swallows him down, and even then, his deed will persist in the land forever. So you look at him, and you look at him a while and be thankful that the Lord let such a man touch our lives, even if it were only for a little while. Harold Belafonte on Martin Luther King. Okay, I think we did a wonderful, wonderful job talking about the life, legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and what it means to us. Lady E, you always get the last words.
I think that a lot of it has already been said. If I may be able to just to repeat what's already been said, and that is to take some time and find the Dr. King that's in us. And rather than to be silent, to use our voice and to live out that dream, that vision, that purpose that will allow everybody to be free, to walk together hand in hand, so that little boys, Black girls, Black boys, we can all just be together, make a difference, and make this world the place that it was designed and created to be.
Thank you.
It's in us. We can do it.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I gotta say this to my Noras, to my Elijahs, to my Symphonies, to my Malcolms, to all you young people. Dr. King was 26. You're not much younger than he was. We're always telling you on Tuesday night, what do we tell you? Use your voice, use your voice, use your voice, use your voice. Don't be silent. From Frederick Douglass to Martin Luther King, to Susan B. Anthony, to anybody that changed society. It wasn't, if they hadn't, suppose he had kept his mouth shut. Don't do that. Don't do that. Use your voice. Find the King in you. Thank all of you. Love all of y'all. See y'all soon, and stay alive and free. Happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Next night.
Good night.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Street Soldiers Radio. This episode was sponsored by Comerica Bank as another way of raising expectations in the communities we serve. The Life and Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. program was designed to honor MLK Day and to rejoice the legacy of Dr. King's contributions to America.